So, just to state for the record, today is March 24th, 2021, and my name is Ben Bauman. I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm speaking via phone with Richard Boehning, who is is it Lafayette, Indiana?
Well, no. It's Richard, I pronounce it Boehning. That's Boehning.
Oh, okay. Richard Boehning, okay.
People can't spell it, people can't pronounce it, so you're not an unusual situation. But I now live in Fort Myers, Florida.
Fort Myers, Florida. Okay, got it. And we are doing an interview for the Indiana Legislative Oral History Initiative. So just starting off, when and where were you born?
I was born in Rensselaer, Indiana, which is in Jasper County, on July 2nd, 1937, the same day that Amelia Earhart went missing.
Wow, okay. Interesting. That's our trivia fact there. Wow.
Trivia, yes, indeed.
And what were your parents' names?
My father's name was Virgil Boehning, and my mother's name was Catherine. Her maiden name was Hoferlin, Hoeferlin.
Okay. And where was your family from before Indiana?
Well, my grandfather came from Peoria, Illinois, and my mother's family migrated from the east through eventually Ohio and then Indiana.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And what were your parents' occupations?
My father was a truck driver, and my mother was a housewife.
Okay. So how would you describe your childhood?
I grew up in Francisville, Indiana, which is a small town in Pulaski County, about 1,000 people or less. And I had a great life, and the older I get and the more I learn, I kind of realized it was a great life, a great opportunity. I always thought that the education system wasn't the best. The school system was sort of run by the township trustee, and he was always pretty tight with the money. So when it came to getting the best teachers, we had a few good teachers that were there for long periods of time, but a lot of the new teachers were on the low end of the scale. So,
okay.
I thought, the education wasn't so good, but, the results were good. I mean, I look at what some of my compatriots in my class and classes behind me did, and we had a nice high percentage that graduated from college and went on to have successful professional careers.
Yeah, okay. That's good. And who would you say was the most influential people in your childhood?
Oh, my mother and my maternal grandfather.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And why were they so influential?
I don't know. My mother was pretty unusual. She gave me a lot of freedoms. I was always kind of an independent sort, and I started working construction when I was 14, and I started working for the Monon Railroad as a student telegrapher when I was 15, and I was working for the railroad as a telegrapher, taking the place of train agents who were going on vacation for 2 weeks. Started in June of my junior year in high school, and I was 16 at the time. I turned 17 in July, but I started actually when I was 16. So, it was pretty young, but I commuted to wherever the job was in Northwest Indiana on the Monon Railroad, and enjoyed that independence, and so that kind of got me going. I was sort of stubborn, kind of wanted it my way.
Okay.
I was very stubborn.
Fair enough. All right. And did you have much understanding about your family's politics or political beliefs as a child?
Not as a child, but as I got older into my teens, our family always chuckled at my maternal grandparents. My grandmother was a Republican Baptist,
Okay.
and my grandfather was a Democrat Catholic.
Wow.
And, that was quite a contrast.
Yeah, definitely.
But they got along fine, and their marriage survived for many, many, many years until they both passed away. So, but no, politics was not a big thing in our lives.
Okay. Now, how would you describe your educational experiences in terms of, did you have any favorite subjects or extracurricular activities that you were involved in?
You're talking in college?
I guess in like high school and college.
Well, high school, again, it was a small school.
Yeah.
The choices weren't
Not a lot. Yeah.
The choices weren't too great, but yeah, I did all of the activities. I mean, yeah, I was president of the class in the 8th grade, the 9th grade, the 10th grade, the 11th grade, and the 12th grade, and I was active in just a lot of activities in high school, but in college, not quite so much. I kind of emphasized studying, and our family had no money, so it was pretty important that I not play in college, but use my time wisely and get out as soon as I could, just from an efficiency standpoint.
Sure. And where did you go to college?
Indiana University at Bloomington.
Okay.
I was involved in the business law program, which was actually, I was interested in business, not so much law, but I thought law would be a good graduate degree to have rather than getting an MBA. So I got it was a 3-3 program where you spent 3 years in business school, and then your senior year you went to law school, or your first year of law school, and your credits counted both for your undergraduate degree in the business school and for your law degree. So that saved me a year. And then I went summer school at law school also, and business school.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Now, as a child growing up, did you have any views about the state of Indiana or about being a Hoosier?
No, I don't think that I did. I mean, yeah, I love basketball.
Okay.
I wasn't any good, but I loved it.
Yeah.
I can remember I was when 1953 when Milan played Muncie Central in the famous Bobby Plump game, and but no, I don't think so.
Okay.
As far as being a Hoosier compared to being a Buckeye or living in Kentucky, no, I did not.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Did you enjoy your experiences at IU?
I did. I enjoyed the business school more than the law school.
Okay.
Law school was extremely competitive, but yeah, I did. Those are great years.
Did you start to develop sort of a political identity as you went through college?
No.
No. Okay.
But both my parents were Republicans.
Okay.
And in my small town, I would say 80% of the people in the town were Republicans.
Right.
It was just a very conservative, German-based type community.
Yeah.
Just very conservative in nature, and I think that had a lot to do with my political upbringing.
Yeah. Sure. So what was your first job out of college?
My first job out of college was I joined a lawyer in Lafayette, Indiana, by the name of William Bennett, or Bill Bennett,
Okay.
who was a sole practitioner, and we practiced law together, and we stayed together I had my license for 50 years, even though during the years 46 to 50, I was kind of semi-retired,
Yeah.
and was starting to back out a little bit. would have given up my license before that, but my wife said, "No, you worked too hard for it. Keep it for 50 years." So I did.
Okay. That works.
Yeah.
And when did you get married?
I got married while I was in college, actually, in my sophomore year.
Oh, okay.
Undergraduate school.
Oh, okay. Cool. And do you have any children?
5 children, yes.
Okay, wow. All right.
By the time I got out of law school, we had 2 children.
Oh,
so you can see why I was anxious.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you say your family influenced your career?
Well, it's primarily my mother, but just having confidence in me and giving me a lot of freedoms to do what I wanted to do. I mean, I was playing around. I had a stock market account with an investment firm when I was 16 and made enough money in the stock market to buy me a used car that was actually just a year old. So,
okay.
She really encouraged me in a lot of ways, and I didn't have hours, and she just gave me a lot of freedom, and she just said, "Don't abuse the privileges that I give you." So I think that kind of gave me a good start.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow. And so, how did you become more seriously involved in politics?
Well, I started practicing law in Lafayette, Indiana, and we moved into a neighborhood in Lafayette, and one of my neighbors, 1, 2, 3 doors down, was a gentleman by the name of O.U. Sullivan, and he was active in the local Lafayette Republican politics. In fact, his brother was lieutenant governor in Mississippi, I think, one of the southern states. So he had always been involved in politics, and I started practicing law in 1961. But in 1963, he said, well, "Why don't you become a precinct committeeman and help me work on Don Blue's mayoral race that was being held?" Let's see, that was in the fall of 1963. So I did. I became a precinct committeeman and worked my precinct and got involved in politics and kind of worked with him and became active in Don Blue's bid for mayor of Lafayette.
Oh, okay.
And then when Don Blue won, he asked me to be city attorney. I go, wow, I've only lived here 2 years.
Yeah.
So that was very complimentary to Lafayette, actually, because, it's a university town. It had a lot of people in and out. So the philosophy of the town was, we don't know strangers. You come into our town, you're accepted. You don't have to live here for 3 generations for us to know you.
Right,
That was really something.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. And as you initially became involved in politics, did you start to develop an idea of what key issues were important to you?
No.
No, okay.
I just love politics for politics.
Okay, sure.
Not issue oriented.
Now, how did you get involved with the Indiana General Assembly?
Well, I was a city attorney, and in 1964 and 1965, and in 1966, the existing legislators representing the county, and we had 2 in the county. We didn't have single districts at the time. Retired. One died, and one decided. No, they just decided not to run. So a bunch of Republicans ran. I think there was 6 or 7 of us ran in the primary, and the persons with the top 2 votes were the people representing the Republican Party in the general election in November. And there were a lot of well-known people running in that election, including the vice chairman of the Republican Party, and that was Frances Gaylord. She got more votes in that election, in that primary, than I did, but I came in second. So, boom, I was on the ticket, and then, during the summer months, I don't know, I seemingly had more appeal to moderate and independents than a lot of Democrats or Republicans. And I don't know why, but I did. But I got then the most votes in the fall election, and got more than Francis Gaylord or two Democrat candidates that were running against me, because I think I had more of an appeal to independents and even some Democrats.
Okay, interesting. Now, was there any legislation that you wanted to champion or fight against?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did you have any political heroes at the time?
No, I can't say I did.
Interesting. All right. Now, what type of campaign did you run? Was it kind of one of those group campaigns, or was it an individual campaign?
It was individual campaigns.
Okay.
As you mispronounced my name when you got me on the phone here, and my name is hard to spell, so I used that in my initial campaigning, and like I had billboards with my name misspelled 4 times, and then crossed out, and then spelled the correct way the last time, and it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But people remembered it, so it was a name recognition thing. So
that's funny.
We didn't spend a lot of money on campaigns at the time. We just didn't.
Yeah. Did you emphasize any particular things in your campaign?
No, not that I recall.
Okay.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit philosophically here.
Yeah.
Everything that happens now. How old are you, Ben?
26.
Oh, gee. All right, I've got grandkids older than you. All right, but everything that happens now is a lemon, and they try to make lemonade out of it. I mean, nothing can happen in society today that is not made a political issue one way or the other. Whether it's COVID-19 or the killing of 9 people or 10 people in Boulder, Colorado recently, or whatever it might be, has to become a political issue. And I get so tired of it and sick of it, because it was not like that back when we ran. We were, there were issues, but in essence, you voted for a person not based on where he stood on the issues, but you voted for a person by saying, I trust this guy's judgment, and I think he will make good decisions for me and will represent me in the General Assembly. Not issues, character.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so I guess you feel like politics has changed quite a bit then from when you served.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, it's pretty sad when I haven't watched news for years on television. I don't even know why they call it news. I mean, it so upsets me. That I refuse to, and I read a few things on the internet. I read the Wall Street Journal, and that's it. But in a way, it's too sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, and why do you think it has drifted into kind of a political situation where it's mostly lots of opinion pieces and cultural issues are talked about almost nonstop? Like, why is that?
Because it works.
Okay, just it gets attention.
Yeah, it's not right, but it works.
Yeah.
It's not right in my opinion, my humble opinion.
Yeah, well, I guess people kind of like gossip more than news, and that's interesting.
And again, I grew up in a Christian community where lying was frowned upon. I mean, you didn't lie. You didn't stretch the truth. But again, this is an old man talking. Sometimes I feel like that standard would be laughed at today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Have you noticed if the Indiana General Assembly has changed a lot in your opinion?
Yeah, I'm assuming that it has. I really don't follow it that closely.
Okay.
I could draw some conclusions, but those conclusions would be based on not facts. So I would say it probably has changed, but if you ask me specifically in what regard, I really couldn't tell you.
Right. Okay. Now, when you were campaigning, did you have a campaign strategy at all?
Yeah, I had it was just pretty much a get out the vote thing.
Okay, sure.
My billboard, everything, I had a consistent color in my campaign brochures and things, and I had this postcard campaign where it said, I'm a Boehning backer, won't you join me in voting for Dick Boehning? And then I had these packets and gave packets of 10 to people who would say, you want to help my campaign? And I'd say this kind of to independents and Democrats. I said, sure, Nick, we like you. I said, well, would you mail 10 of these? They were stamped. Just fill out an address, 10 of your friends who are independent or Democrat, and send them out to them. And we did hundreds of these things. And and we said at a certain time when they were to send them out, like 10 days before the election. But that worked very well for me. I mean, I had some people saying, I got 5 postcards in the mail today about you. So that type of thing, just a get out the vote situation.
Yeah, okay. And what was
cheap?
that's true. That works. What was the most important thing to you as a candidate?
Selling myself.
Yeah.
That people could trust me.
And did you have a particular method of sort of selling that to people?
No, not really.
Okay. What was your first election day like?
My first election day?
Yeah.
Oh, it was pretty exciting. It was the primary election, and we all went down to the local newspaper when as I recall, that's where the Journal Courier, the votes were coming in. They had sort of a station there where they would report from the courthouse, and it was kind of fun watching those votes come in and winning the election.
Yeah. What were you thinking when you walked into the State House your first day in office as an elected official in the General Assembly?
I felt proud, Said, I knew I'd really done well. I mean, I was the first person in my family to ever graduate from college, and so This was a nice accomplishment for me and for my family, my parents, my grandparents. So I felt good about that.
Yeah, that's really neat. What expectations did you have for the legislative process?
Well, I just didn't know what the process was. I read every bill. Every bill that came up for a vote I had read. And I spent hours and hours at night reading these bills. And I think Adam Benjamin from Lake County and myself were the only two that read all of the bills. But
okay.
You can't do that anymore because they're too long, they're too complicated, but they were a lot shorter, and there were fewer of them, and they were a lot simpler then.
Yeah. Interesting, okay. How did you learn the ins and outs of state politics?
Just by building up friendships and relationships with people. After the primary election, when I was elected to represent the Republican Party in the fall general election, got a knock on the door one day and went to the door, and there was a guy standing at the door. He said, my name is Otis Bowen. Congratulations on winning the primary election. I'd like to come in and talk to you about the upcoming session. I said, sure, come on in.
Wow, okay.
So he walked in and introduced himself and asked about our family and where I was from. I said, grew up in Francisville, Indiana, went to high school there. He goes, you did? He said, I graduated from high school in Francisville, Indiana. What are the coincidences there? So I kind of immediately had a relationship with Doc Bowen.
Yeah.
He said, I'm running for Speaker of the House. Will you support me? And I said, yes. I mean, that was a good decision.
Yes.
But it was a decision I shouldn't have made at the time,
Yeah.
because I didn't know who he was running against. I didn't know the politics of it, but I just liked him. I said, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Mistake. But and then as the fall went on and headed towards the election, Bill Ruckelshaus, who was going to be elected as the majority leader, and what was his name? Billy Howard, who they were sort of running as a team. Ruckelshaus wanted to be majority leader, and Billy Howard wanted to be speaker. And they would come to Lafayette and sit out in my office and kind of bug me to get me to change my mind, because the vote was very close, And in fact, after the election, there were 66 Republicans elected, and we went to vote for Speaker of the House. The first ballot was 33-33. And so, Otis Bowen was appreciative of the fact, he knew I was under a lot of pressure, and he was appreciative of the fact that I had stuck with him, and we liked each other. And so before I was ever voted on a bill, he appointed me as chairman of this Cities and Towns Committee.
Yeah.
So boom, I hadn't served a day, and I was chairman of a committee.
Wow. Yeah.
But there are a lot of new people there. So,
okay.
I mean, you had to fill these. There were not a lot. I mean, because the prior time had been the Goldwater debacle in '64.
Yeah.
And all the Republicans were swept out, and new Republicans were swept in '66. And so there were a lot of new positions to fill, and not a lot of old timers in there to fill them.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that Bowen was one of your political mentors in the General Assembly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you know the needs and wants of your constituents?
Well, you listen to them. You get letters from them. They all have feelings and I don't know. It's just sort of a third sense, I guess. Fifth sense, whatever. Sixth sense.
Did you ever get any kind of sort of hostile letters from constituents at all, or were they all generally fairly friendly?
No, I didn't. They weren't hostile, but I got a letter once from a lady, elderly lady who I knew back in Lafayette, and she was a very devoted Christian, and it's when we were debating the Sunday closing law. We used to have a law in Indiana where businesses could not open on Sunday unless it was a business where it had to be open, well, maybe like pharmacy or something like that. And so I was not as conservative as she was, and I was going to be voting in favor of that. So I remember she wrote me a pretty scathing letter about how I was going to go to hell if I voted for them.
Wow.
So,
jeez.
I spent a lot of I sent her a nice letter back.
Okay, yeah.
I sort of explained my philosophy and understanding of that issue, and we had a typing pool that typed letters that we would dictate. The gal that typed the letter came to me later and said, that was the nicest letter that I had typed for a long time. So I took that as a nice compliment.
Yeah,
so.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that must have been always interesting I guess when you get messages from constituents, you never really know what you're going to get, and yeah.
Yeah. but then, lobbyists are lobbyists, and you got a lot of information from lobbying groups as to their positions on various issues. And of course, I was in Tippecanoe County, which Purdue's located there, so I had to slip through that. John Hicks was represented the university in his relationship with the legislature, so he would kind of keep me advised as what the university needs and wants were. And so you take in that information and you try to be responsive and the university was one of my constituents, so
yeah.
I wanted to be responsive to their needs too.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you remember the first bill that you sponsored in the General Assembly?
No.
Okay. And some people do.
I knew you were. But, when we set up this appointment for this call, I thought, I know he's going to ask me what are the important bills I sponsored and all that. When I think back, what people were interested in is just let me live a good life with not a lot of interference, and give me some basics, like good roads, so I can go see my kids and my grandkids.
Right.
And it was a lot simpler then than it is now.
Yeah, I suppose. What was the regular interaction like amongst members of the General Assembly?
It was good. I mean, we had various obviously there were Republicans and there were Democrats. Mm-hmm. And within the Republican Party, there was the Marion County interests. There are 15 legislators that they had, and they tried to get through their Marion County things that the 15 legislators and Keith Buellin, who was a Republican county chairman, had tried to put together. And then there were rural and urban interests, and but they didn't dictate. They were just differences of opinion, but it didn't necessarily dictate the results of how it was going to be. It just sort of was how people viewed things.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And what was the relationship like between Democrats and Republicans in your time?
We had differences, but came noon, we went out to lunch together. And if we had a controversial issue where we were losing some Republicans and we needed some Democratic votes, go to the majority leader and say, hey, we need 3 votes. Can you give us 3 votes? And say, well, give me a day to find out. Come back and say, yeah, we got, yeah, they'll support you on this issue. Of course, 3 days later, they want something in return, but that was all right, too. That's what the Speaker of the House does. He manages those little controversies.
Yeah, okay. So...
But it was not mean. It was not mean.
Yeah.
Everyone was courteous to one another.
So I guess not like this or stereotype of how people view that relationship today in American politics. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
What differences, if any, were there between members of the House and Senate?
Oh, that was just like rural, urban. Senators are senators and House members are House members. And I think the Senate members thought, they represented a larger number of people than the House members, and they were more of the... but we got along fine. We got along fine.
Yeah.
But again, it was just something that allowed people to make a slight separation as to who you are and where you are. Well, I'm in the House, or I'm in the Senate, or I'm from Marion County, or I'm from Sullivan, Indiana. It just measured it. Or I'm from north of Highway 40, or I'm from south of Highway 40. All of these little things kick in, but they were not big. They were just the way a person felt.
Yeah. What did you think of the process for generating a bill?
I thought it was great. I really did. where it had to go through the committee and it had various readings. You had the right to amend the bill. It had to pass 2 houses. It had to be signed by the governor. And there were veto rights. And you could, the process was actually quite good.
Yeah.
I thought it was very, very fair. And I know it developed over a period of years, long before I ever got there, but it was to me, it was an excellent system.
Yeah, okay. And how did you work to get support for any legislation that you authored?
You work through your caucus, through the caucus primarily, and
Yeah, okay.
and one-on-one. And
what was that one-on-one process like outside of formal votes and committee meetings?
Where you just come up to a friend and say, I've got this bill coming up, hope you can support it. And they'd say, yeah, I will, or no, I won't. And then you talk to them and maybe try to convince them otherwise. But it was all done on a friendly basis.
Yeah, okay. So
and we had some, when I was a freshman, first year, which would have been the 60 calendar day session once every 2 years. In 1966, that's before they had longer sessions, and it was before they had annual sessions. Bill Latz, a state rep from Allen County, sat behind me. He was kind of a character. And Ruckelshaus, who was majority leader, gave Latz and me a bill to introduce and try to get through, and he knew it wouldn't pass, and he told us it wouldn't pass, but we would get some good publicity on it. It was to create an ombudsman for the state of Indiana, so that people would have someone to talk to if they were having problems with any governmental agency in the state.
Okay.
So Latz and I had fun with that, but
Yeah.
never got out of the house. I
Right.
don't think it even got out of committee, but it was fun.
Yeah, okay. And so did you have a pretty good sense of how people would vote prior to actually voting on a bill?
Yeah.
Now, what about the roles of party leadership? How critical were they to determining if a bill got passed or not?
You gotta be kidding. The speaker was the father of the house.
Okay.
He said pretty much, when I was majority leader, I was majority leader for, Ruckelshaus left after his first term in 66. I was majority leader in 68, 69, 70, 4 years. Last year being 72. And Otis Boehning was speaker during those periods of time. And that was a period of time when the Marion County delegation was trying to get Unigov passed, which would expand the city of Indianapolis to all of the county except for a few places like Speedway. And it was an important bill. It was an important bill for the Republican Party. It was an important bill for the city of Indianapolis. And Dick Lugar was mayor. And Lugar is a fine, intelligent individual, but he screwed up. Bowen was the Republican Marion County delegation was giving the caucus some problems by not supporting some things that Otis Boehning wanted sponsored. So Bowen was holding and not handing down the Unigov bill.
Okay.
Well, Lugar got a little miffed at that, so went on television, had a press conference, and gave out Doc Bowen's private telephone number.
Oh my gosh.
Living, and asked people to call him to convince him to vote for Unigov.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, Bowen was really ticked off.
I bet. Wow.
He was ticked off. He goes, that bill is never going to be handed down. I promise you that. And I thought, well, crap, this is not very good. So I let him cool down for a day and then went and talked to him. And I said, Doc, this is really important for the city of Indianapolis. And look, Lugar messed up, but just brush it off and move ahead, because it's more important that this bill passed. And eventually he did cool down and handed it down, and it passed.
That's interesting. So you played, I guess, a fairly substantial role in all of that to help get that moving along.
Oh, deep in my heart, I knew that if I hadn't done that, Lugar would never have been a United States Senator. No, I'm kidding.
That's like, for the record, by the way. That's
for the record, yeah. I mean, but it is interesting how little things can mean such a difference in the history of what happens.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. Something that might just seem like a conversation could be a pivotal moment.
Yes, yes. Yeah, little things. Right.
Now, this is kind of a fun question I like to ask. What does the public not know about the Indiana General Assembly and how it operates?
Well, you mean back then or now? Now I don't have the foggiest.
Well, I guess back then.
But back then, I don't know, a lot of the lobbyists did a lot of entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all had to stay in, it was 60 calendar days, and it was a fast-moving thing. We had to get a lot done. So we had to stay in Indianapolis pretty much full-time. So my first session, I stayed at the Claypool Hotel, which was the pits. But it was cheap, and I didn't have a lot of money. So, but you get lonesome. Your wife's not there, your family's not there.
Yeah.
And the lobbyists would have hotel rooms, and they would open them up, and you could go in, and there'd be other legislators in there, and you could go in and socialize in those places and have a Coke, and sometimes they've had food in there. So I would say that was probably not known by the general public, but the general public would be very skeptical of that now and say, oh, well, they influenced you, but did they influence me? Nah, I don't think they did. I just ate their food and left and forgot about it.
Yeah. And how did your legislative service affect your family life? You mentioned how hard it was being away for a couple months.
Well, they survived. They turned out okay.
Yeah,
we were all right. No, we functioned. We got along. We survived.
Yeah, okay. That's good. What would you say was the most controversial legislative issue during your time in the Assembly?
Doc Bowen was hot on property tax relief.
Uh-huh.
There are only three ways that you can basically raise money to fund financially the state government.
Yeah.
That's through the taxation of property taxes, or what you buy, sales taxes, or what you earn, income taxes. And sometimes those become unbalanced.
Yeah.
And one of those three-legged stools end up paying more and supporting more of the total costs than the other two from an equity standpoint. Doc Bowen thought that property tax was paying too much of that, and that other people who didn't own property were not paying their fair share. So, property tax relief was that issue. But, the sub-issue was, you can only have property tax relief if you increase the income tax with the sales tax. So some people, the issue was increasing taxes, not decreasing taxes. So, he tried to convince people it was a dollar for dollar thing. We're not going to spend more. They said, the politicians say that all the time, but they end up spending more. And so it was probably the biggest issue during my years in the legislature.
Yeah, okay. And what was eventually decided on that with property tax?
he got his plan passed
Yeah.
and adopted. I think it increased both the sales and income tax. I can't quite remember, and then the money did go into a property tax replacement fund, and property taxes were reduced at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was big, particularly for farmers and businessmen who own property, because that load was very heavy for them.
Yeah. Sure. What legislation that you worked on took the most of your time?
Yeah, I can't remember. My first session, I was a freshman. I was chairman of the Cities and Towns Committee. I voted on the bills. I handled my Cities and Towns Committee as well as I could, and people didn't complain to the speaker, so I guess I did an okay job. But I can't remember what wonderful legislation I passed during my first 60-day session. Probably nothing. But I can't remember.
Okay.
And then later on, I went from that 60-day session to becoming majority leader. So I was more concerned with leadership issues than with specific pieces of legislation. And I would carry legislation for some of the state offices, like in essence was representing the governor and what legislation he wanted passed. I was representing the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and I can tell you a story that Ted Sendak was the Attorney General. He loved this piece of legislation, and I said, Ted, it won't pass. He goes, well, no, yeah, it will. Just introduce it for me. It'll pass. So I did, and the vote was 1 aye and 99 nays. I was the only one that voted for it. And poor Ted Sendak, everyone was just laughing at him. It may not have been 99. There were probably some absent, but there was only one vote in favor, and that was my vote. Come on, Ted.
Sure.
We're here.
And what would you say was your what would you say was your proudest moment as a legislator?
I don't know. I can't say.
Okay, no worries.
I was actually pretty proud of my having the guts to talk to the Speaker of the House about the Unigov thing.
Yeah.
So, that was behind the scenes, but that was pretty important. I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah. Okay.
That was an important thing for Indianapolis. It was an important thing for the state of Indiana. And if I contributed just a little bit, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. What was the biggest challenge you had to overcome during your time in office?
I don't know. I don't know. I probably, if I gave some thought to that, I would have an answer, but I can't think of anything now.
Okay.
That fine. I would view particularly as a challenge. I think my biggest challenge was a personality defect that I had, and that was that when I did something and I would have my priorities and what I wanted to accomplish, but once I accomplished them, then I got tired of the job.
Oh, okay.
And so after 6 years in the legislature, Otis Bowen was running for governor. I had a chance to run for Speaker of the House, which would have been an interesting position, but I was just kind of tired of the legislature, and I wanted to move on and sort of do something else. It's like when 1972, Otis Bowen appointed me as chairman of the Indiana State Highway Commission, and he told me he wanted certain things done, and I developed a plan to get them done in the first 4 years, and we got them done. And he ran for election again and won. I said, "You want to be chairman another 4 years?" I said, "No, I really don't. I mean,
yeah, okay.
I got everything done I wanted to get done, and it's just difficult. I mean, I could, but you needed new people in there with new ideas. So that's probably a personality defect I have."
Okay, so is that why you left the General Assembly then? Was just you got kind of tired of it?
Yeah, yep.
And that's also interesting because I feel like most people don't do that. They just want to either stick around or they lose an election. So.
Yeah, well, let's face it. There's a little pride in being a legislator.
Yeah.
And you like the recognition of it, which is fine.
Yeah. What would you say is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly?
Oh, probably trying to differentiate what's best for the people versus their prejudicial views based on their politics or their background or whatever. I don't know. That's hard to say. I don't know.
Okay. And
sorry, I have so many I don't know answers.
No, that's okay. Well, I mean, it's it was a while ago, so I don't blame you. Let's see. Now, these are some. When I was doing some research before this interview, some different topics seem to be talked a lot about in the newspapers, and just wanted to see if you remember anything about them. So do you remember a bill that was going to lower the voting age to 18 in 1971?
I sponsored it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So tell me a little bit about that and what made you come up with that idea and, how was it, what was the response to it, I guess?
Again, I was majority leader at the time. This had been talked about publicly through media and everything. It was a time to lower the voting age to 18. I mean, 18-year-olds were going into the service there in the Vietnam, and all of that, and it was a time to do it. And it was just as a political party thing. We said, let's get out in front of this and let's do it.
Yeah.
And so we did it.
Okay, that's cool. And so was it received pretty well then for the most part?
Yeah, it was.
Everyone thought it made sense. So.
Yeah. But I mean, now there's talk about lowering the voting age to 16.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. No, I don't. Do I think 18 is a good age? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Do I think it ought to be increased to 21? No. Do I think it ought to be decreased to 16? No.
Yeah, I understand. What about this bill about wiretapping? Do you remember anything about that?
No,
like
that does not ring a bell.
1969, I guess, about like the ability for police to do wiretapping or something to catch criminals.
No, right. Interesting.
Okay.
No, I don't remember that.
So how would you summarize your time as a state legislator?
A great learning experience for me. I mean, I was first elected in 1966, and I was 29 years old, about your age. And so it was a learning experience. I was still young enough, that I learned a lot and met a lot of interesting people, and it was a great experience for me.
Yeah, sure. Do you have a favorite story or memory from your time as a legislator?
I probably do. Well, I think the election of Otis Bowen as Speaker was kind of interesting. That wasn't legislative, but that was part of the legislative process of electing a Speaker. And when the first vote was 33 to 33, and how people had committed votes to various candidates, but a lot of the several of the people that had committed to Howard said, "I'll just commit to you on the first vote." So they switched then on the second vote. So that built helped build the career of a very successful human being in the state of Indiana, a guy that I really respected and loved a lot. I don't know if even his life in Washington and when he was Secretary of Health and Human Services, interesting stories. I don't know if you've read his book or not.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What lessons, if any, did you learn from your time in the General Assembly?
What lessons? You have to be proactive and thinking all the time to try not to stretch the truth. Be honest, because you're going to be put in situations where it might be easier for the people that you're talking to stretch the truth, but don't do it.
Yeah.
I guess that would qualify.
Yeah, okay. Did you have any regrets as a legislator?
Oh, perhaps. A perhaps regret was that I didn't stay in the legislature, run again, and try to be elected as Speaker of the House. It might have been another nice footstep to a more elevated political career in my life.
Yeah. Okay. What advice would you give to future legislators or even current legislators? None. Okay. Fair enough. Fair.
I mean, they just roll their eyes anyway. So.
Yeah.
And say, "Thank you, sir."
Well, I figured I'd ask you anyway. All right. How has the state of Indiana changed over the course of your lifetime?
How's it changed? Well, I don't think it's changed substantially, except in good natural ways that it should have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis has grown into a wonderful community. Back when I was in law school, there was no way I'd want to live in Indianapolis. It just wasn't a place to be. It was depressing.
Okay.
And that's why, I said, "Well, where do I want to live?" And I said, "Well, Lafayette's good. It's a community town. Fort Wayne's nice. It's a pretty progressive town, but a city." So that's kind of where I thought that would be good. But Indianapolis has changed, and I think one of the big considerations, what makes Indiana great, and again, this is coming from my background.
Yeah.
Because I loved the study of transportation when I was in business school, and I was chairman of the Indiana Highway Commission, and I was on Bob Orr's transportation coordinating board or whatever it was for a few years, and so transportation has been big, and I can see what transportation has done from when I was young. I can remember when I was in the legislature, Bowen telling me this is on US 31, north of Rochester, Indiana, in Fulton County, had a one-lane bridge. I mean, you had to stop and let traffic through the other way because it was a one-lane bridge. Now, people wouldn't even understand what you're talking about if you said that now.
Yeah.
I remember driving. My father had some cousins in Cissna Park, Illinois. So we drove down 43 and then cut over west on Highway 24, which was a 2-lane roadway in Indiana. But we hit the Illinois border, and you've probably never heard of this, Ben, but it was a 1.5-lane road.
That's interesting, yeah.
A U.S. highway that was a lane and a half.
Weird.
I mean, every time a car came towards you, you kind of had to scoot off the road, and then
wow.
you get back on again.
Yeah, it's really strange.
It's difficult, really, to comprehend.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
And then you think, well, what did the interstate system do to the city of Indianapolis? Oh my goodness, what would Indianapolis be without 465 and with all of the interstate transportation systems that it has?
Yeah.
It's just, and the railroad industry has been great in Indiana because to get to Chicago from the east, you got to go through Indiana,
right?
Which is pretty good. We've got ports now in the north, on Lake Michigan, and on the Ohio River, and we keep trying to build a good transportation system. But one of the issues currently in the Indiana legislature is increasing the weight limits for trucks in Indiana. Oh my goodness. Do they tear apart the roads now and the bridges? Oh yes they do.
Yeah.
Will it be worse if they increase the weights? Oh yes it will. So
yeah. Be
prepared if that happens.
Right.
But again, the truckers are a heavy lobbying group, and so it's an important issue.
Yeah. Okay.
And, one of the things that I did when I was chairman of the Highway Commission was Otis Bowen wanted all of the mainline interstates done in a 4-year period of time. And at the time, he was staying at the top of the Riley Towers in Indianapolis. And he took me up there and he said, and we walked around, it was night, and it was dusk. And he said, we walked all the way around. He said, look, and there was all of the interstate going through Indianapolis that was dirt, weeds.
Wow. Not
one piece of asphalt there.
Yeah.
And he goes, I want all of this done. I want all of the main lines, interstates in Indiana done at the end of 1976. So, I mean, we had great engineers and they loved the challenge. And it was during my 4 years as chairman of the Highway Commission, Nixon had withheld highway monies, and so the Supreme Court eventually forced him to release those monies, and we knew it was kind of coming. So I told my engineers, I said, if you get me, I can't remember how many, let's say 30 projects on the shelf, when this money gets released, it's going to be first come, first serve. We're going to have money to get all these projects done. So I want all of these projects on the shelf within, I don't know how many days, 90 days, 120 days. And when you do it, I'm going to take you all over to Howard Johnson's across the street and buy you a beer. And, they did it for a beer.
Boy.
They just worked their fannies off. And it was fun.
Yeah.
But, we ran out of money. Because the federal highway, the way the monies were distributed for the interstates was that those that had the most needs got the most money. Well, as your needs narrowed, you got next to nothing. So we came up with this plan that the Indiana Department of Highways would borrow the money from another state agency. And when the feds paid them back over a period of years, we would pay back that money. And it's not a lot of money now. I think it was like $42 million. But then it was a lot of money. And the legislature passed it. So we were able to get all those mainline interstates done during that 4-year period of time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
That's not legislative, I'm sorry. But we took it to the legislature, if that counts.
Yeah, it's connected, so. Now, I know we touched upon this a little bit earlier on, but how has politics changed in Indiana?
I don't know. I'm out of politics.
Okay, fair enough.
Politics is politics.
Yeah.
I think it's now more conservative liberal politics
Okay.
than Republican Democrat politics.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there's a tendency to say the Republicans are more conservative than the Democrats, but if you put the two together, back when I was in the legislature, there was a large overlay. I mean, if you could put it on a spreadsheet or a chart, the Republicans who are in the legislature and the Democrats who are in the legislature, there would be a lot of overlapping in the middle.
Okay, so a lot more moderate people, I guess.
Yes, there were Democrats who were more conservative than I was, probably.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think you find that now.
Yeah, that'd probably be pretty rare, I guess. Yeah. All right. Last few questions here. What, if any, enduring qualities do Hoosiers still have or hold dear?
Don't you come up with these questions?
Just trying to keep you on your feet, you know.
What do Hoosiers hold dear? Well, honesty. I mean, when you compare us to our neighbor to the west, that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
I have a son that lives, he's retired and just moved to Tennessee from Colorado. And I said, well, who are your neighbors? He goes, well, mostly they're people trying to escape Illinois.
Okay.
So, I understand that.
Interesting, yeah. Wow.
I don't know. I think there's still a good thread of honesty in Indiana. I think there's still some good politicians.
Yeah. All right. And last one. What do you want Hoosiers to know about their role in relation to the function of the Indiana General Assembly?
Repeat the question again.
Yeah. What do you want Hoosiers to know about their role in relation to the function of the Indiana General Assembly?
Well, voting is an important responsibility, and try to examine the candidates and look for the candidates who you think will most represent not only you but your neighbors and your community, and get off of this right-wing conservative progressive thing and stay on those issues, and just try to get somebody who's got a brain and is going to be honest and just do a good job, not someone who represents, quote, your interests.
Mm-hmm.
Broaden your perspective a little bit. Think of your neighbors.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything that I didn't ask about that you wanted to mention or that you thought of, or?
No, I think you pretty well hit on interesting points. It's very good.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I think it'll be a nice addition to the project. So,
Appreciate your time. Good luck with your project.
Sounds good. All right.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Bye-bye.